All right, welcome back. This is Keziah Glow, and I'm in the studio jacking up. I don't know if you guys heard that last little tidbit. We're having so much fun in the studio. I forgot to turn the mic off. So anyway, I have my guest, Dennis Speed. Hi, Dennis.
Hello.
Hello, that's all we get. So Dennis is a return guest, and we're really happy to have him here today because he's given us so much information. He gave us the forecast before we saw the country go into this economic whirlwind. You've given us so much information that has been helpful. Unfortunately, we only have a half an hour with you, so we really need to be concise. Dennis, what are your thoughts? We just won, and I say we just won because I feel like Obama is in office, and I'm really excited. And, I'm glad his opponent did not win. And I know you're not excited about that. Or are you excited about that? And I want to hear what your thoughts are.
Well, no, my thoughts are basically with the decease of the New York City subway system. That is to say, I just finished riding on the New York City subway system. And, of course, it's been a big issue recently because the subways were flooded.
Right.
And in addition to the subways being flooded, there was a lot of damage along the shoreline and down in Far Rockaway, particularly Staten Island, some of the other areas. And New Jersey, of course, experienced the same thing.
Right.
Estimates are running anywhere from $30 billion to $50 billion as low estimates for the total amount of damage.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what I'm dealing with is the fact that I know that Mayor Bloomberg, who is the mayor of New York and presumably the guardian of the citizens of New York, is net worth $25 billion.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that Mayor Bloomberg knows because of the American Society of Civil Engineers and other people who did studies about the impending dangers to New York City years ago, that you could have built a flood wall around New York City for $7 billion starting sometime right after 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
All kinds of studies came out saying this and giving the estimates and so on. Well, that wasn't done, and now we have both loss of human life and costs, which will probably total something along the lines of $50 billion because that investment wasn't made. And I'm not suggesting that the mayor necessarily had to build the entire flood wall himself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, after all, there's also Warren Buffett. There are all kinds of other people that the mayor is familiar with.
A lot of his friends.
And as J. Paul Getty once said, if you can count your money, you don't have $1 billion.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The mayor could have literally taken $7.5 billion of his money, had $18 billion left, would have gotten tax breaks for the money he would have, in fact, given, built the flood wall, and not have ever felt it. So what's interesting is that he was nonetheless insistent that the marathon get run until it became clear that some of the marathon runners might have ended up getting injured by some of the people that were going to be in the neighborhoods that they were going to be going through, like running over the dead bodies of the people down in Staten Island, for example, as one person put it. And I'm saying this to say something about the quality of mind that I believe presently occupies public office generally in the United States. Bloomberg is one example of that. Christie is a different example, a man that just before election night is put on the phone by President Barack Obama with Bruce Springsteen, and he's governor, of course, of New Jersey, Christie, and he nearly breaks down in tears because his hero has gotten on the phone with him, and then there's a discussion about how this proves that Obama deserves the Nobel Peace Prize because he put Springsteen and Christie on the phone, and Springsteen, of course, is no Christie fan. That's a good joke, but the quality of leadership that we have in office is somewhat short of sanity. I truly believe that what we have entered is an age in which you have a lot of people in office that are just crazy, to the point that we're being told that global warming is the reason that the city got flooded, but there are studies done 9, 10 years ago saying that this storm would occur.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you believed that, you should have done something about it.
Right. Unless you wanted it to
unless
happen.
you wanted that to occur. Now, there's an interesting thing about this, because the people that really got hit down in New Jersey, for example, yes, there were people with summer homes along the shore, but there's a whole lot of working poor people that have lived down on those shore areas ever since really the 1920s and 30s. Matter of fact, what they're living in is winterized bungalows. What they were living in was winterized bungalows. So a lot of those got washed into the middle of Highway 35, Route 35, down there along the shore area where, Perth Amboy and some of those other areas are west of that area. And so the fundamental concern I have is that when you have that degree of divorcement from reality, it's possible under those circumstances, and generally under those circumstances, it's possible that war breaks out because people who are desperate to avoid these kinds of problems turn to war as a solution, which is very much like the Roman arena. That's what they do. And I think that if you ask me what I think has happened, I'm not happy about Obama being elected. I believe Obama is just as crazy as Christie, which is as crazy as Bloomberg.
Mm-hmm.
I think you've entered an age in which people like the people that we know from history from the Roman Empire, whether we're talking about Caligula or Nero or we're talking about Tiberius, these kind of people. That's who we now have governing.
Mm.
And I believe that the people have an additional problem because, there was a saying from an old mayor named Jimmy Walker in New York, people get the government that they deserve. So that, I believe we've entered a kind of apocalyptic time. And, it really has kind of moved beyond politics for me. This has moved into a civilizational kind of thing. It's not about, I think the party system is over. I think you're going to see that. I think you'll see that in the next 4 years. You'll begin to see not only people dropping out of these parties, I think you're going to see the withering away of these parties. The Democratic and Republican parties are essentially over. They don't know that, but just that's like what we were talking about 6 years ago about the economic crisis, and I was telling you things about that then that everybody said didn't make any sense and they were crazy. I'm telling you now some other things. And I'm telling you that the Democratic-Republican Party system is over as of this election.
It's a wig.
Gone.
People get the
People get the government they deserve.
People get the government that they deserve. Couldn't get that out. So one thing we want to go into is mobilization and, being responsible for the things that we see in office or the things that we see happen and not so much letting someone else say, well, this is where we should go and this is what we should do. One interjection I want to make, you spoke about Bloomberg and his money. He actually, it's funny, when he started in office, I think he was worth $8 billion.
About that much, that's right.
And he took $1 for his pay.
That's right.
And now he's worth $25 billion
net.
And let me just tell you, I have personal knowledge of this. When the market was crashing, he was hiring people at his company, and they were doing very well. Mm-hmm. So, he has a whole different structure.
It's a whole different thing. This guy, well, we'll come back because you want to go to solutions. Let's say something about that. I just came from a meeting with some people who happened to usefully point out that the charter of the Federal Reserve Bank comes due on December 21st of this year. It's a 99-year charter. The charter was created in 1913, and it expires on December 21st of 2012.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Now, what's important about that is people would say, wait a minute, if it's the Federal Reserve, isn't that part of the federal government? How could that expire? Well, the answer is the reason it can expire is it was never part of the federal government. In other words, the U.S. Treasury doesn't have a lease that expires.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
Or the U.S. Congress doesn't have a lease that expires. Right?
Yeah.
So the Federal Reserve could not have a lease unless it were not part of the government.
Right.
So anyway, some people were pointing out, well, wait a minute, why should this lease be renewed? Maybe we should just tell people that the Federal Reserve lease should not be renewed.
Right. Right.
Kind of simple thing.
Mm-hmm.
And thereby hangs the tale of political mobilization today, because I believe that what you are alluding to actually already is people have to decide what government they wish and they have to be that government that they wish to have.
You know, when they start telling, when we start saying, or I'm saying we, but when it's said, hey, let's not renew the Federal Reserve's lease, they're going to give you all type of scary doomsday answers as to, you better not do that, because if you do that, then everything will fail. It'll be like the bailout.
Exactly.
We need to give this money to the banks because the banks need to give this money to all the home buyers. Well, we never saw any of that money. Mm-hmm. You can't get a loan.
Right.
I mean, maybe you can. It's a I don't know, but
no, you're basically right.
Basically, the money never came back
never
this way.
Came to you.
So how did that help us? Nobody's shopping.
Right. Because the deal was that it wasn't for you; it was for the banks. What they did was they bailed out the banking system, not the people. It's like talking about health care, where people are talking really about health insurance, not health care.
Right.
Because you don't see hospitals being built.
We were just talking about health insurance and health care.
Yeah, you know, how many more doctors, how many more nurses, how many more physical hospitals have been built in the United States?
Right.
See? So that's the game, and the concept is that the people have to jump in here and decide that they are going to be the government that they want to have.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this issue of the Federal Reserve, I was talking to people about exactly the thing you just said, which is that what's going to be important to do is to get people off. See, the issue is this. Let's take the issue of loans. Mm-hmm. You're not seeing that money because 11, 12 years ago, the bank law that existed that would have allowed you to get that money, Glass-Steagall, was abolished.
And wait, interjection. Yeah. Look up Glass-Steagall. Take your time and Google that. Look it up, Glass-Steagall.
Yes, in November of 1999, the law got changed. Up until then, commercial banking was separated from what's called investment banking, which just means the money that's in your bank account was separate from the money that Goldman Sachs had access to. That was for 60 years. That was the case. But then the law changed. So what really happened with the bailout was that the loans, the money that they were gambling with, became your money with the bailout. You bailed those people out who were gambling with your money, but now you were responsible for their gambling debt. That's what changed. Today in this country, every single man, woman, and child has $250,000 worth of debt on their head. And that's not their personal debt. That's the debt that the government says it's responsible for, and you and I are responsible for because we're supposed to be the government. See, the people have assumed that debt. So what we have to say is, wait a minute, no. Why don't we just put the law back that was there? Glass-Steagall goes back. If that goes back, then all that debt that you just put on our back in 2008 is declared null and void. Why? Because the people of the United States never incurred that debt. That was done by banks that you bailed out in September of 2008. We didn't agree to that debt. You simply put that debt on our back because the law had been changed, so you could do that. We're saying, no, rescind that. Put Glass-Steagall back, and then take New York City. New York City right now needs an infusion of what's called credit, which just means we need to have funds to rebuild all that infrastructure that went down and maybe build properly new infrastructure in its place. All right, we should be able to do that. The Federal Reserve Bank every month right now is putting $85 billion a month into Europe to bail Europe out. This has been kept almost as a secret program, but you can look that up too. People should just look these things up. Ben Bernanke, he made that announcement some time back. But the point I'm trying to make is $85 billion in New York City, that's 1 month worth of what these people from the Federal Reserve are giving overseas. That would take care of all of the immediate damage that we had. But they're not going to do any of this because the people of the United States have to decide. They are going to deal with the incompetence and the corruption at all levels of government, including the President of the United States, emphatically, who is an agent of that process. And that's why he's allowed to be president.
I don't have anything to say right now.
Well, you asked me to be succinct, get to the point. I mean, that's the point.
Got to the point. Question, mobilization, go back to that.
Okay, well, let's look at who we are. Let's look at the country. Look at how the change happened, which is there due to the Obama campaign largely. Young people were brought in as part of the electorate, and they became decisive in various states, counties, and in the mobilization. Also, of course, the Hispanic population has been talked about, and other ethnic sections have been talked about. But really, there's another way to look at it. Most young people don't have a party affiliation. They would like to have an affiliation with principle. They would like to have an affiliation with what they think is good for the country. And they would like somebody to speak to them about that. Now, the issue to me is that what needs to be done is that the people have to decide to listen to people that have been out there. Various kinds of prophets have been out there. Lyndon LaRouche has been out there talking as an economist and has said many things about this whole issue of physical economy and what should be done. Other people like Louis Farrakhan has criticized the president on things like the Libya policy and what happened there in terms of the whole way that thing evolved and the crime that was committed in the way in which Gaddafi was taken out of power and the United States' role in that. Right. So there are people who are making those points, but now the issue you brought, how do you mobilize around that? Well, I think, if a crime has been committed, it doesn't really matter how powerful the perpetrator is, ostensibly, that the idea is that nobody is above the law. Okay, so if you take the issue of Benghazi and you say that there's a crime that was committed in some fashion there, then that should be brought to trial. That should be brought to an actual evidentiary hearing, and those things are beginning to happen in the Congress of the United States. But the same thing could be said about the Federal Reserve. The same thing could be said about the credit system. These are criminal acts. Yeah.
I'm going to ask him about this youth channel because I'm scrolling through my Instagram and some girl just posted it.
Well, let's ask him about it. See what he says. What is it about?
Think you know?
Yeah.
You a clown. So. You go to that party on Friday?
Hey, Batala.
Oh, yo, what's good, boy?
Yeah, I was going through my Instagram and some girl posted this picture about the youth channel. What's this? You know anything about it?
Right, youth channel. That's on Manhattan Neighborhood Networks. It's on Time Warner Cable on 34, and if you got Fios, it's on channel 33.
I got RCN.
That's
channel 82.
Oh, okay. So I'm gonna write the girl on Instagram and see what this is about.
Definitely, yo. If anything, yo, spread the word.
All right, I got you. I definitely will. It was good seeing y'all.
Likewise.
I'll see y'all later.
All right, cool.
So there are avenues by which these matters could be addressed from a political standpoint, but the more important thing is the life of the people. Right now, those people in Staten Island and other parts of the city don't have electricity and heat, don't have a place to live. They didn't do anything that caused them to lose their homes. That was a natural disaster. Their government is supposed to step in under these circumstances and say, oh, we're not simply bailing you out. We recognize that you, and many of these people are from households of veterans, for example, that served in wars. We owe you, and we're going to help you. We're going to help you not because we're giving you a handout. We're going to help you because you are a citizen of this country, and that's why your government is in existence. This is something that we can make young people, I think, particularly, a vehicle for, because I think that they will see that now that you have a re-election of Obama, there's no more excuses.
That's where I was going to go next. In the at the polls, there were a lot of people, and I think I shared this with you. I was like, why is this so crowded? And someone said, well, that's because there were a lot of people who didn't vote before. They're voting now. So like we were saying, this is the time to take those people who they didn't have a say, or they didn't care, or they said, you know what, I'm not really affected by this. This doesn't really have anything to do with me. Or, you know what, I don't want to be a part of it. But it's about demystifying the topics that you're talking about. Because if I don't have any idea what Glass-Steagall is and how that could actually affect me in a positive direction, or, you know, I don't know really what the Federal Reserve does, then I kind of feel like, well, that's separate. I'm here and that's there, and I don't really realize this. But I think what you're saying is now is the time for all of us and the youth to mobilize ourselves and to be more aware of what's really happening in our government besides what we're hearing on the main mass media.
What you have is, 50 years ago, there was a president of the United States named John Kennedy. He was assassinated on November 22nd. And next year, Friday, November 22nd, will be the exact 50th anniversary of that deed. Now, when he was president, he had this concept called the New Frontier. And despite the fact that Malcolm X and others correctly criticized him for many things in American policy that were wrong, Malcolm called him one of the best backfield runners for neocolonialism that had ever been, born. But Kennedy had a vision, and the vision was that the country had a responsibility to history. And he said, the famous "ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country," was a call to service for the American people, that you were supposed to do something. You had to step up. Now that was a positive thing because it meant that people could hold their government accountable for employing them as agents of change. See? That has disappeared, but we can make that happen right now. Because all over this country, the needs are obvious. We could spell them out here, but everybody knows what they are. They know there's 27 million adults unemployed. We know the problems of health care all over the country. We know all the problems. Food supply is one of the major and crazy kinds of Monsanto-type food supply is not what we need. In other words, these genetically modified organisms, really, all this kind of thing. So people know what their situation is in that sense. The problem is, what's the national mission? What's the destiny of people? And when Kennedy used, of course, the Moonshot, he used that as a way of saying, we're going to do something impossible, not because it's easy, but because it's hard. If you look at our country today, we need water and power. Here in this area, we need it in the West Coast. We got drought going on over massive parts of our country. There's a way to reconstruct the infrastructure of our country as a Apollo-style program, where the concept is put 20 to 25 million Americans to work. Start out in tranches, 6 to 12 million first, and then take it up.
Just to interject, that was my next place I was going. All this damage that you were talking about in New York City with the trains, and you said there's a lot of work that needs to be done. Those are all jobs. All those people can be employed by doing this work. So I just wanted to interject that.
And check this out. What you can also do, though, think about it this way. In the old days, when we had the space program, people said, well, that's like out there, obviously, and it's not here. But there's another thing. Since we know that there are forms of climactic shift that's definitely going on, whether you think it's global warming, global cooling, whether you don't agree with either, it's clear that there's a climactic shift going on. How about this idea? We talk about the idea of outer space. We talk about the idea of Earth. But there's something called near-Earth orbit. there's all those layers of atmosphere above the earth. And of course, the concept is, well, our weather patterns are clearly being affected by climatic shift. Okay, how about this? How about we create, together with nations that have space programs? China has a space program. Russia has a space program. Some other people have elements of space programs. We have what we call a strategic defense of the earth. In other words, we know there are asteroids out there that can hit us. We know something about the various forms of radiation that are hitting us. And what we need is to talk about, well, if we're going to have infrastructure, we've got to deal with the fact that, for example, we need to green parts of the West where we have all of these deserts which are expanding. We have the fires that are going on out there. If we're going to bring water down from, for example, fresh water from Alaska or something like that, can we use that to green the deserts and change the climate to make it more temperate, more cool? Well, that is something that has already been designed back in the 1960s under the Kennedy administration. So, like, now, what that kind of a project is the most advanced kind of project you can think of. It means that you're not just bringing people in to dig ditches and to maybe do a few other semi-skilled things. You're bringing them into a platform from which platform they're going to be actually employed in phases till their skill levels begin to increase and improve. And you can take things like our veterans that come out of a highly disciplined military background, give them first shot at some of these jobs and their families, and then radiate out the process like in a brigade fashion. They teach the people that come behind them, which means young people who come behind them, but they've got a certain level of discipline that they already bring to the process.
About to line him, I'm gonna ask him about this roof channel because I'm scrolling through my Instagram and some girl just posted it. Like,
Wait, let's ask him about it to see what he says and what is it about.
Think you know?
Yeah.
You a clown, son. Were you going to that party on Friday?
Hey, Batala.
Oh, yo, what's good, boy?
Yeah, I was going through my Instagram and some girl posted this picture about the youth channel. What's this? You know anything about it?
Right, youth channel. That's on Manhattan Neighborhood Networks. It's on Time on the Cable on 34, and if you got Fios, it's on channel 33.
I got RCN.
RCN.
That's channel 82.
Oh, okay. So I'm gonna write the girl on Instagram and see what this is about.
Definitely, yo. If anything, yo, spread the word.
All right, I got you. I definitely will. It was good seeing y'all.
Likewise.
I'll see y'all later.
All right, cool.